I think when we think about AI and how it just feels different, we've had digital transformation for a long time when you think about everything from e-commerce as a model or even digital banking. But now AI is getting into everything, but it feels more threatening in some ways to some workers who are feeling like it's taking over parts of the job that I actually either enjoyed doing or I spent a lot of time getting good at, or there's all kinds of sort of emotional responses that can take place. So it is different.
We are talking about leaders or orchestrator, but that's actually applies to anybody and everybody. We have to start thinking ourselves as individual, orchestrator and creator, not just doer. The best leaders today have to be very, very calm. And then calmness doesn't come without practicing those basic, fundamental spiritual leadership guidelines about being resilient and mindful and be highly empathetic to outside and inside. It's really a balance between you have to educate yourself with data, and then you have to educate yourself with your lived experience, and then you have to kind of sense it in your gut. That's where the best decision making comes from.
My very special guest is recognized as one of the world's leading management thinkers and technologists. He's on a mission to humanize organizational transformation, bridging the worlds of business, technology, and humanity. Through his companies, research, books, articles, and podcasts, he enables leaders with frameworks and platforms to align purpose, people, process, and technology. It's Faisal Hoque. Welcome to the show, Faisal.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm really excited to be chatting today because I know that you're a prolific author. I would say that's the only way I can describe it, Faisal. Prolific author, 10 books. You've worked with some amazing clients, including the Department of Defense, which I know pretty well, PepsiCo and MasterCard, which I don't know well at all. But what impresses me most is that you talk about blending this Eastern philosophy with some of the American entrepreneurial spirit. And I came to that sort of view a little bit later in life. But my question for you is, how did that fusion of that Eastern philosophy and what you're seeing with the American spirit really shape how you think about leadership and about technology?
Yes, absolutely. Because, all the technology we have seen maybe previous to AI has been about, its infrastructure, connectivity, enablement of some kind, right? I mean, we've never had a scenario like we have with AI where they are going to become our coworkers. I know it's really a different way of augmenting human capability because they are a independent capability, as it's not quite there yet, but that's where it's going. So how we work, how we interact with each other, how we think, all that's dramatically changing.
So in Transcend, you talk about how we're experiencing too much too fast when it comes to AI. And so for managers who find themselves caught in between executive pressure to get AI going or the tendency of their teams to be trying to absorb all of this AI, how would you characterize the danger that we're in, if we do allow it to be too much too fast?
Yeah, because the reason is I think that it goes back to what I just said, that AI has the potential to become our co-worker, co-thinker, co-doer, and we're already headed towards kind of an agentic enterprise where AI agents are going to do a lot of the work. It's already, you see that in like when you call somebody and chatbot is answering, and then it's actually doing some of the workflow, and in some cases you're making decision. That requires a cultural and mental shift, how you want to organize your enterprise versus anything else we have done before. So if you don't think through very diligently, you'll end up making a lot of mistakes because AI is very good at pattern recognition, and it's not there yet in terms of handling exception. So, for example, if you say, look, my flight is overbooked and I have somebody who needs to go home for, let's say, to take care of some loved one, but the AI has decided that's the person who should be left behind. That's either not situationally empathetic to respond to that kind of exception, right? So you're going to actually, you're going to turn off a lot of the customer and your brand value and your offering and your employees, by the way, if you don't think through the proper way to implement it and mitigate the risk that it brings along inherently with its capabilities and capacity. So it requires a centrist, balanced view of how you go about it versus
So it
otherwise.
seems very reasonable to me to the way you've described it, yet we are still moving with too much too fast. What's driving this impatience that we have when it comes to AI? Is it more about hope or fear or both?
I think it's both, and there's also a fear of leaving, left behind, right? So that FOMO aspect of it. If I don't do it, my competition is going to do it, which is true. But I mean, there's a lack of recognition. It's going to catch up. That AI is not really your competitive advantage. AI is an enabler. You yourself, meaning you, the enterprise yourself, is the competitive advantage, which is really about people. Because to really, you don't want to be that same. AI generates a lot of generic, offering and generic content and generic services, right? So if you so competitive advantage is really your lived experience and your unique value and unique understanding of a particular situation or solution. That's what needs to be cultivated, right? So that requires thinking. It's like simmering slow versus just jumping in and trying to make a quick meal, and that quick meal usually doesn't taste that very good, right? So it's a kind of that kind of analogy or parallel. So it requires thinking how you want to go about
Yeah,
it.
it seems that if AI can do it, I like to think it's already commoditized because you're not going to basically train a model and say, "Oh, look, now we've got." Eventually, it's just all going to be caught up. But the part that's your unique understanding of the customer's problem, your unique way of teaming with other people inside the organization to bring novel solutions. You mentioned novelty before. That seems to be the enduring competitive advantage we have.
100%. I mean, maybe someday will completely be reversed. But as we stand today, if you look at 2026, 2027, and maybe even 2028, I don't see how, I don't see technology being that advanced where you can create totally unique offering services and customer care and leadership. It really, at the end of the day, boils down to leadership that gets replaced by these kind of agentic and other advanced technology. We're very much at the beginning. No, I wouldn't say beginning, but experimental phase, little more than just experimental phase.
Yeah, and in Transcend, from a leadership perspective, you help us by giving us a couple of really important frameworks, open and care. Let's start with open. Can you walk us through what open stands for and how that works?
Sure. I mean, it's really open is what we constructed open based on like some 30 years of doing transformation and innovation, but in the context of AI, it really kind of articulates a method or a model that you can use to architect your innovation portfolio. So open stands for outlining where you want to go and what value you want to create. uh, who do you want to partner with, both as a technology partner, meaning that AI itself is a partner, but your ecosystem partner. How do you experiment different kind of opportunities and create an innovation pipeline? And then how do you navigate the execution of that pipeline in a meaningful way that actually creating value for you? So that's open stands for that. The care, which is really a governance framework and a risk management framework, that starts by coming up with catastrophic scenario. That's what C stands for. So what's the worst case thing that can happen in terms of your brand, customer alienation, et cetera, right? Or data leak, whatever the case may be. How do you assess and rack and stack those risk factors? And then how do you regulate those risk factors and kind of decide, I have got the resource, I have the opportunity, but does the risk really outweigh that opportunity, and should we not do it? And then let's say you are in the execution model, then how do you exit things that are not working, and how do you exit that things that will inherently will go wrong? That's just the nature of any kind of innovation. So combination of those two creates that centric view and a balanced portfolio of innovation and risk management.
So it's almost like open is about planning. Let's make sure we have some thoughtful planning. And then care is about, well, let's plan for things to go wrong because they probably will when we're dealing with technology. And better to have thought about that ahead of time than to react and then all of a sudden enter the downward spiral or the doom loop, so to speak, when things inevitably go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like, it's the execution model for monitoring and value creation, and having a transparency, enterprise-wide transparency, because a lot of the initiative we see today is experimental, right? Somebody says, "Oh, look, let's see you chat GPT or Claude or whatever to do this, or let's try this to do that." This more brings more of a disciplined approach of ideation to creation to execution, and then really maturing and monitoring the value creation and risk management.
I think when you get into portfolio management at the enterprise level, it's already been dicey even before you bring in AI. Now, with something that's moving so fast, it would seem like that type of transparency, visibility, the sharing would be at a premium, but it doesn't sound like it's always happening.
No, I mean, as you know, I mean, we struggle with portfolio management at an enterprise level for years and years and years. But that's probably the best way to create that horizontal and vertical collaboration, where ideas gets generated from your, ranks and files, but also creates that transparency and the alignment between the strategic viewpoint that C-suite brings to the table. So that, and most organization has never been able to create that repeatable management system that requires to do so. So leadership may be very good at being the catalyst and being the evangelist to make some change happen, but it often enough you have to restart every time something new happens. Now with AI, what happens is even more dicier, because now you have a separate component that has a cultural implication of how you construct your organization and how you coexist with your digital resource and your human resource, and how it plays a role in next generation of future of work. So this disciplined approach of innovation pipeline and innovation modeling and innovation monitoring and risk associated with that, those kind of steps, is critical. And leadership becomes much of an orchestration game versus just ideation and or actually doing it.
And I think when we think about AI and how it just feels different, we've had digital transformation for a long time when you think about everything from e-commerce as a model or even digital banking. But now AI is getting into everything, but it feels more threatening in some ways to some workers who are feeling like it's taking over parts of the job that I actually either enjoyed doing or I spent a lot of time getting good at, or there's all kinds of sort of emotional responses that can take place. So it is different.
Yeah, and look, I mean, we are talking about leaders or orchestrator, but that's actually applies to anybody and everybody, right? We have to start thinking ourselves as individual orchestrator and creator, not just doers, because AI has enormous opportunity for efficiency, but with efficiency comes letting go of the things that you maybe like to tinker with. Maybe you design the tinkering, not actually tinkering. So it's a different kind of way of thinking than just like, for example, I'll give you, you talked about my writing. I mean, in my writing, what I focus on is my lived experience and my story, not just sentence construction or grammatical correction or research, right? Because my lived experience and my story is uniquely mine. That's what I'm bringing to the reader, right? So AI can construct that because it doesn't know all my lived experience, even if it can look up my historical, where I was born and what I did, but it's not my story from yesterday, right? So this is where you can add, and I'm just using that as an example. That applies even in a business where you learn something from your customer and now you're trying to bring to other customer. That's a lived experience, right? So this orchestration is what makes the difference versus just looking at it as a mechanical way of living or mechanical way of doing things. It's like, I mean, I often ask, well, if my chef, if AI can cook my meal, why do I need a chef? Well, you need it because a chef has a unique taste bud that's bringing to you versus otherwise, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think that this is something that's really important for leaders who are listening in is that a lot of times if you just carry in the company boilerplate about why we're doing AI, it's going to be seen as very transactional. But if you can talk about your own personal lived experience, how AI is saving you time and how you're spending that time to do maybe strategy things you didn't used to have a chance to do or whatever, all of a sudden those things that are uniquely you, it not only conveys why we're doing what we're doing by adding all these AI tools, but it actually creates a type of connection and gravity that will attract your team and hold them together in a time when everything is really spinning very fast and changing very quickly.
That's absolutely right. And this is the next generation leadership change. It's not like we didn't have enough challenge as leaders. This is the next level of challenge, and I frankly, most of the people are not ready for this because a lot of the leaders, I mean, when you talk about senior leaders, really didn't come from the hands-on tech background, right? So this requires a lot more hands-on technology expertise as a user. Not You don't have to be a coder or a data scientist, but you have to be tech savvy. And most of the senior leaders, are not that. So there's also a generational shift that's happening because the younger generation has grown up with a lot of this technology, and then growing, and their, so their leadership style and work style is a lot different than, let's say, previous generation leaders.
And it feels like a high wire act to be sure. So now you're telling me as a leader, I need to develop more technical capability than I've had in the past, but I also need to be more human about it at a time when we're experiencing rapid change. And that's just the deal. That's where we are. There's no point in judging it, but you have to accept that as the reality.
Yeah, I don't think complexity has never been higher as it is today. When you look at the technological shift, the global economic shift, the geopolitical shift, you look at all that, I don't think complexity has never been as high as it today. And that's the most challenging part for a leader. So going back to that spirituality or whatever we talked about, the Eastern philosophical viewpoint or mindfulness, whatever, that's where it comes because the best leaders today are going to have to be very, very calm. And then calmness doesn't come without practicing those basic fundamental spiritual leadership guidelines about being resilient and mindful and be highly empathetic to uh, uh, you know, outside and inside, right? So if you don't do that, then it's hard to, you know, kind of balance all these moving parts all over the place.
Yeah, what I find encouraging is that whether you have a straight up Eastern philosophical bent or interest, or whether you want to look at Westerners who've kind of crossed over a little bit, whether we're talking about resonant leadership, whether we're talking about Daniel Goleman's work alongside in Altered States, there's a lot of reasons to understand why, as early as the 60s and 70s, major business thinkers in the West have already started looking to the East, but now all of a sudden it's like it's all melding together in a kind of a delightful way, but one that does require a transformation. As you said, we have to if we intend to transcend that which is sort of our historic experience and what's kind of held us back. We're going to have to borrow from East and West and integrate and everything all at the same time.
Absolutely. Look. I mean, if you look at Stoic philosophy and you look at the Western philosophy, or even if you look at a lot of the Western kind of religious bent, they all talk about the same thing. It really doesn't matter whatever principle you want to follow. The bottom line is, to battle a leader, you have to be much more calmer and much more thoughtful and much more considerate, and in order to do that, you have to be more empathetic, more resilient, and more mindful. Pick your path, whatever path you want to use to get there, but that's what's going to take to be a grounded leader. That's on the leadership side, but same thing applies on the tech side. That you don't have to be a coder, you don't have to be a technologist, but you have to understand the application and usage, and you have to be a user to understand how and where these things gets implied and can actually add human value.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of writing these days about how to take advantage of AI. If you open up HBR, you're going to see lots of articles on that kind of stuff. But I came across your work through Psychology Today, where I saw you had an article on intuition. So we're going to accept the fact that we need to get more tech savvy, but we've also established that we need to get more human savvy too. And you talked about intuition. And my question for you, Faisal, is when you think about middle managers, how can we tap into intuition as an actual leadership tool, considering that we're hearing in this other ear of ours, be data driven, be analytic, use AI tools quantitatively. How do you are reconciling intuition and taking advantage of it? What counsel do you have for us as leaders today?
Look, I mean, when I, so fundamentally, intuition is it comes from, living, because you learn from your experience and you know what works and what doesn't work because you lived through it. It also comes from people. Some people are more sensitive about what their gut tells you, right? And it's a very hard to describe without being abstract. But we all believe that your gut. That's why you keep talking about gut. Gut tells you otherwise, right? So it's a really a balance between data. You have to educate yourself with data, and then you have to educate yourself with your lived experience, and then you have to kind of sense it in your gut. That's where the best decision making comes from, whether that's personal or professional, right? I mean, it's like when you meet somebody, you try to learn something about them, and then you develop a intuitive direction that I should explore this relationship, right? Or when you come across a particular professional opportunity, you have some data point, but as you talk and explore that opportunity, you start developing a gut instinct whether that's the right thing for you to do or not. So whether you're a middle manager or a senior manager, whether you're talking about professional context or personal context, this combination of data, lived experience, and gut instinct is what makes us that leadership North Star, or whatever you want to call it, to guide us. And I don't think you can substitute one versus another. I absolutely believe there is no substitution for your gut instinct. Sometimes gut is wrong, but so is data, right? Often enough, data is also wrong. But you kind of need to combine all those three things to get where you want to go.
Yeah, it's almost like if you have a weakness in one of those areas, if you can't look at the data, do the quant side, that's not going to be a great decision. But if you over index or maybe you lean too much on that and you don't bring in the intuition, you're not reading the room, so to speak, all these types of things, and you just kind of feel it. And you did a great job in the article of talking about how intuition does actually show up in our body. There's a relationship there between body and mind. And the reason we've always said for millennia about going with your gut in all those different ways, I think there's something, it's hard to express, just like you said. It feels abstract, but that doesn't mean it's not real and not something that we need to tap into.
100%. And it comes with practice, by the way, just like anything else. When you meditate, you become more mindful. Same way, the more you practice, you kind of start trusting your gut, the better you get at it. And your body and your soul will tell you whether you're in the right direction or not. Doesn't mean you're not. Sometimes it's not. You're not gonna get it wrong, but the more you practice, the better you get at it.
And I feel that's what's happening now when we're afraid of all this change. It's happening so quickly. You mentioned earlier, too much, too fast. And then I think it does have an effect in our bodies. It does shut down parts of our brain. We're less open. We're less seeing connections and possibilities at exactly the wrong time. We're trying to be more innovative. We're taking advantage of technologies. But if we get the people part wrong, if we get the human part wrong, we actually shut our people down at a time when we want them to be open. It's like these things all have to go hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, less curiosity and being curious and being open-minded, gives you that pathway, right? And then, but how you explore that pathway goes back to all the things you just mentioned, right? So it's a really a discipline of many. It's a multidisciplinary approach with a lot of converged ideas and converged, subject matters that will allow you to kind of move forward as a whole, because of the complexity, right? It's not one thing versus another.
I find your work incredibly important right now. I think the nature of the shift that we're going through it's incredibly rigorous and timely and necessary and all those things. So I really appreciate you having written all these books and having shared your journey and bringing your own lived experience alongside your observations. I just think it's the coolest.
Matt, I'm so honored. It means a lot coming that from you, and truly honored that you're hosting me, and means a lot that you feel that way.
Well, the depth of your work is one thing, but I always like to end with something completely frivolous and trivial, which is going to be a quick question for us. And I saw, for example, that Deloitte, you've been named several times as a Technology Fast 50 and Fast 500 award winner, which is wonderful. So I thought we'd get a trivia question about fast things. Thankfully, it's multiple choice. Here's our question. You and I are a team. AI came up with a question, so we're going to see what happens. What is the fastest land animal in the world? Is it A, the quarter horse, B, the cheetah, or C, lion? What do you think, Faisal?
I think it's the cheetah, but I could be
It's
wrong.
gotta be the cheetah, right? So, audience, if you're playing along at home, fastest land animal, is it A, quarter horse, B, cheetah, C, lion? We're going with B, which is the cheetah. And that is correct. We got it. It's the fastest. Top speed 70 miles per hour, by the way. I'm not sure about you Deloitte people, how fast you run. That's pretty fast, 70 miles an hour. But I tell you what, Faisal, I've got a better question for you, which is where can my listeners go to learn more about you and about your amazing work?
Sure. Look, I mean, you can go to my website, which is faisalhoque.com, but you can find me on LinkedIn. I post something every day, and I write for various publications. Fast Company, Psychology Today. We have a podcast as well where we explore some things that we write, which is called the Convergence Podcast. I also write for HBR and occasionally contribute to other publications as well. So you can find me anywhere. If you follow me on LinkedIn, that's probably the best place to find me.
I love it. Well, listeners, I'm going to have those links for you in the show notes. You're only one click away from getting connected with Faisal, starting to consume all this great content. He's got it exactly the right time, exactly when we need it. So, Faisal, thanks so much for being with us and sharing your insights today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been my pleasure.
And listeners, I appreciate you as well. Thanks for investing in yourself. And if you like what we're doing here, just leave a quick 30-second 5-star rating on Spotify. That'd be great. One of my goals for this year, trying to get those Spotify ratings. I'd like to cross over 1,000. I'm pretty close, Faisal. I'm at about 930 right now. Last time I looked,
Wow,
so that'd be awesome.
congratulations.
It's great. But whenever those ratings come in, helps other leaders find this type of content. Help me great guests like you, Faisal. I love it so much. And so that's it for today. Don't manage the business when you can lead the people.